You know, they don't teach you in boot camp how to handle finding enemy babies crying in abandoned buildings. That's probably an oversight in the curriculum, but hey, what do I know? I'm just Marine Sergeant Rex Morrison, call sign Bulldog, and apparently I'm about to make the worst decision of my military career. Again. Let me paint you a picture of paradise. Kepler 442b. A delightful little rock where the sky is permanently the color of rust. The air tastes like metal shavings, and every third building has been converted into rubble by either us or the Chitauri. The Chitauri, in case you're wondering, are 8-foot-tall insectoid nightmares, with mandibles that could crack a walnut, or your skull, depending on their mood. We've been playing the galaxy's most violent game of tag with them for about 6 months now, and let me tell you, nobody's winning. I'm crouched behind what used to be a coffee shop, though I'm using the term loosely since Chitauri coffee apparently involves fermented beetle juice. The smell still lingers, which is saying something, considering half the building is now decorating the street in convenient brick-sized pieces. My comm crackles to life with the dulcet tones of Lieutenant Commander Miranda Frost. We call her Ice Queen, partly because of her personality, and partly because she once stared down a Chitauri war chief until it actually backed away. True story. Morrison, what's your status on the mining facility reconnaissance? I peer through my scope at the facility in question, a squat industrial complex about 2 clicks northeast. It's been suspiciously quiet since the bombardment 3 hours ago. Too quiet, as they say in all those war movies that definitely didn't prepare me for this job. Facility appears abandoned, Commander. No movement, no energy signatures. Whatever was in there either left or became part of the architecture. Copy that. Maintain position and observe. Do not, I repeat, do not approach that facility. Intelligence suggests it was being used as a supply depot. Now here's where things get interesting. See, I've got enhanced audio pickups in my helmet, standard issue for urban reconnaissance. They're great for detecting enemy movement, weapons charging, the usual deadly stuff. What they're also great for, apparently, is picking up sounds that make your stomach drop through your boots. Crying. Not human crying, mind you. This is higher pitch, more chittery, but unmistakably the sound of something small and scared and very much alive. Something that definitely shouldn't be in an abandoned enemy facility. Morrison, acknowledge your orders. I watch the facility through my scope, and there it is again. Faint, but definitely there. Multiple voices, actually. Small ones. Acknowledge, Commander. Maintaining position. What I don't add is that maintaining position is about to become the second worst decision of my military career, right after what I'm planning to do next. See, here's the thing about being a Marine. They train you to follow orders, to trust your chain of command, and to never, ever let your emotions override your tactical judgment. They also train you to recognize when civilians are in danger, though I'm pretty sure they meant human civilians when they wrote that part of the manual. The crying continues, and I start doing math in my head. The Chitauri evacuated this sector 12 hours ago when our artillery started raining down. Standard protocol would be to take all personnel and equipment. But what if they missed something? Or someone? My comm buzzes again. All units be advised. Long-range scanners detect incoming Chitauri reinforcements. ETA 40 minutes. Prepare for defensive positions. 40 minutes. That's not a lot of time to make a decision that could end with me either court-martialed or dead, or both, which would be impressively efficient. I key my comm to private channel and contact Corporal Tommy O'Brien, my squad's tech specialist and the only person crazy enough to understand my particular brand of tactical insanity. Gadget, you monitoring the mining facility? Yeah, Bulldog. Why? Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. Define thinking. There's a pause that speaks volumes about our friendship and his opinion of my decision-making skills. Rex, whatever you're planning, Ice Queen is going to feed you to the Chitauri herself if you disobey direct orders again. Only if she finds out. She always finds out. Remember the incident with the supply convoy? I do remember, actually. It involved me, a stolen hover transport, and 3 cases of medical supplies that I may have redistributed to a civilian shelter without proper authorization. Ice Queen made me scrub plasma conduits for a month. This is different, Gadget. How is this different? That's when the crying gets louder, more desperate, and I realize I've already made my decision. The smart play is to sit here, follow orders, and let whatever's in that facility sort itself out. The Rex Morrison play is apparently to throw caution to the wind and go investigate strange noises in enemy territory, because this time, I think there are kids involved. The silence on the comm stretches long enough for me to question my entire life path. Finally, Gadget sighs, and I can practically hear him shaking his head. Kids? Rex, they're Chitauri. They're the enemy. Yeah, well, enemy or not, kids are kids. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Marine Sergeant Rex Morrison decided to potentially end his career, and possibly his life, for creatures he'd been trained to consider hostile aliens. My mother always said I had a soft spot for strays. 20 minutes later, I'm belly crawling through what used to be a garden but now looks like the surface of an angry moon. The ceasefire alarm had gone off 15 minutes ago, which means both sides have agreed to stop shooting at each other for exactly 1 hour. It's like a cosmic timeout, except people still die if they're stupid enough to wander into the wrong place. Guess what category I fall into? The mining facility looms ahead of me, all twisted metal and shattered concrete. Someone had really gone to town with the explosives here. Probably us, if I'm being honest. We're not exactly subtle when it comes to urban renovation. The crying is definitely louder now, coming from what looks like the administrative building. My helmet's translator is picking up fragments, trying to make sense of the chittering sounds, but all I'm getting are emotional markers. Fear. Hunger. Loneliness. Great. Just great. I slip through a hole in the perimeter fence that's roughly the size of a small vehicle. Subtle. The facility's main courtyard looks like someone played soccer with grenades, and the silence is so complete, it makes my ears ring. Well, except for the crying. Following the sound, I work my way through the debris toward the admin building. The front entrance is completely blocked, but there's a service door hanging off its hinges like a broken jaw. Perfect. Inside, the place is a maze of overturned furniture and scattered papers covered in Qatari script. It looks like someone left in a hurry, which makes sense considering we were lobbing artillery shells at them 12 hours ago, but the crying is definitely coming from deeper in the building. I follow a corridor lined with what I assume are office spaces, though Qatari office furniture apparently involves a lot more spikes than I'm comfortable with. The sound is coming from the end of the hall, behind a heavy door marked with symbols that my translator helpfully renders as storage authorized personnel only. Because nothing says good idea like opening mysterious doors in abandoned enemy facility. The door is locked, but that's what plasma cutters are for. The metal glows, and parts like butter, and I push through into a room that makes my blood freeze in my veins. Cages. 6 of them, arranged in 2 rows, and in those cages, huddled together like fuzzy nightmares, are the sources of the crying. Chitauri cubs. Now, adult Chitauri are the stuff of horror movies. Picture a praying mantis that went to the gym religiously and developed a serious attitude problem. But these little guys? They're about the size of house cats, covered in soft gray fur instead of the usual armored carapace, and they have these enormous black eyes that would make a Disney animator weep with joy. They also looked absolutely terrified. One of them, slightly larger than the others, approaches the front of its cage and starts chittering at me. My translator kicks in, and I nearly drop my rifle. Please. Are you here to feed us? We are very hungry. It has been 3 days since the feeding time. 3 days. 3 days. I kneel down in front of the cage and all 6 cubs crowd forward, pressing against the bars. They're thin, I realize. Too thin. And their fur, which should probably be fluffy, is matted and dull. Who put you here? I ask, feeling somewhat ridiculous for having a conversation with baby aliens. The soldiers brought us when the loud noises started, the largest cub responds. They said we would be safe here, but then more loud noises came, and they ran away. They forgot the feeding. They forgot the feeding. Of course they did, because nothing says military efficiency like abandoning your hostages during an evacuation. I stand up and key my comm to Dr. Elena Martinez, our expedition xenobiologist. If anyone knows about Chitauri dietary requirements, it would be Bug Lady. Martinez here. Rex, what are you doing on an open channel during ceasefire? Elena. Hypothetically speaking, if someone were to encounter juvenile Chitauri specimens, how long could they survive without food? There's a pause that stretches just long enough for me to imagine her raising that one eyebrow that means I'm about to get a lecture. Rex Morrison, please tell me you are not where I think you are. I'm definitely not in an abandoned enemy facility looking at 6 starving Chitauri cubs. That would be crazy. Oh, for the love of Rex, juvenile Chitauri require specialized protein paste every 4 to 6 hours. Their metabolisms are incredibly fast during the growth phase. Without proper nutrition, they'll enter metabolic shutdown within days. Define days. 5 days maximum. 3 days is already critical. I look back at the cubs who are watching me with those enormous eyes. One of them has started that chittering sound again, which I'm beginning to realize is their equivalent of crying. And where would one hypothetically find this protein paste? The main Chitauri compound would have synthesizers. Why are you asking me this? Because apparently I've completely lost my mind, that's why. No reason. Thanks, Elena. I cut the channel and turned back to the cubs. They're all watching me now, and I swear they understand more than they're letting on. Okay, kids, here's the deal. I'm going to get you some food, but you need to stay quiet while I figure this out. The largest cube tilts its head in a way that's disturbingly human. You will help us, but you are human soldier. We are taught that human soldiers are dangerous. Yeah, well, your people are taught a lot of things. Doesn't make them all true. I start working on the cage locks with my multi-tool. Simple electronic locks, nothing fancy. They pop open one by one, and the cubs tumble out in a furry pile of relief and exhaustion. Listen up, Rugrats. I'm gonna leave you here for a bit while I go get your food. Do not wander off, do not make noise, and definitely do not let anyone else find you. You will return? The largest cub asks, and there's something in its voice that hits me right in the chest. Yeah, kid, I'll be back. Famous last words right there. As I head back toward the exit, I can't help but think about the cosmic joke this has become. 6 months of fighting these creatures, watching them try to kill my friends, losing good Marines to their claws and weapons. And now here I am, planning to risk my life to keep their children from starving. My mother would be proud. Also probably very confused, but definitely proud. But the main Chitauri compound is only about 1 kilometer away, through active artillery positions, from both sides. This is definitely going to end well. Back at my original position behind the former coffee shop. I'm having what you might charitably call a crisis of sanity. The smart thing to do would be to report the cubs to Ice Queen and let the proper authorities handle it. The Rex Morrison thing to do is apparently to plan what will undoubtedly go down in military history as either the most heroic or most idiotic rescue mission ever attempted. I'm leaning toward idiotic. I patched through to Gadget on our secure channel. Tommy, I need a favor. Oh no, I know that tone. That's your I'm about to do something that will get us both killed tone. Have I ever gotten you killed before? Rex, you got me blown up last month. You survived, didn't you? I spent 3 days in medical with a concussion and temporary hearing loss. Temporary being the key word there. I can practically hear him rubbing his temples. Tommy O'Brien is probably the smartest guy in our unit, which is why he's perpetually frustrated by my complete disregard for tactical common sense. He's also my best friend, which means he's going to help me whether he likes it or not. What do you need? I need to get to the main Chitauri compound. Specifically, their food processing center. The silence stretches long enough for me to count 3 separate explosions in the distance. The ceasefire has another 20 minutes, but both sides are apparently using the time to move equipment and prepare for the next round of mutual destruction. Rex, that compound is in the middle of a hot zone. Even during ceasefire, both sides have patrols running, and after ceasefire ends, it's going to be a shooting gallery. I know. You'll have to cross through human artillery positions, Chitauri defensive lines, and about half a kilometer of open ground that gets shelled every 15 minutes. I know. And you want to do this why exactly? I look back toward the mining facility where 6 alien kids are waiting for someone to care enough to feed them. Because it's the right thing to do. Another pause. You know, most people would question the ethics of risking human lives for enemy offspring. Most people weren't raised by Martha Morrison. Your mother really did a number on you, didn't she? She always said the measure of a person isn't how they treat their friends, but how they treat those who can't help them. She also said you'd probably die doing something stupidly noble. She knew me well. Tommy sighs, and I know I've got him. Okay, what's the plan? Can you create a distraction, something big enough to draw attention away from the compound for about 10 minutes? Define distraction. I need both sides looking somewhere else while I make my grocery run. Both sides? Rex, you realize that means I'll have to make enough noise to get everyone's attention. That's not a distraction, that's a declaration of war. Perfect. Designed specifically to impress, Wizard thought. I pull up the tactical display on my helmet's HUD, marking the route to the compound. It's not pretty. The most direct path takes me through what our intelligence cheerfully calls the meat grinder, a stretch of no man's land where both sides have overlapping fields of fire. The longer route goes through the industrial sector, but that's where the Chitauri have their heaviest defensive positions. What about the old subway tunnels? Tommy suggests. They run under most of the city. Flooded and collapsed in 6 places. Reconnaissance checked them out last week. Surface approach. Through active minefields and automated defense turrets. Aerial? With what? My winning personality? You could requisition a transport? Sure, let me just walk up to Ice Queen and explain that I need to borrow a military aircraft to feed enemy children. I'm sure that conversation will go great. Tommy goes quiet for a moment, and I can almost hear the gears turning in his head. When he speaks again, his voice has that particular tone that means he's had either a brilliant idea or a spectacularly bad one. What if we don't tell her it's for feeding enemy children? Come again? The compound has strategic value, right? Intelligence gathering, potential supply disruption, reconnaissance of enemy positions. Tommy, you beautiful, devious genius. I have my moments, but Rex, this is still insane. Even with a distraction, you'll be completely exposed during the approach and extraction. They all move during the next artillery pause. Both sides cease fire for 60 seconds every hour to prevent overheating their systems. 60 seconds. That's barely enough time to cross half the distance. Then I'll have to be creative. I start pulling together my gear, emergency rations, water, medical supplies, and my grandfather's lucky rabbit's foot that's been with me through 3 deployments. Not that I'm superstitious, but at this point, I'll take all the help I can get. Rex, there's something else you should consider. What's that? If you get caught by the Chitauri, they're not going to care about your good intentions. To them, you're an enemy combatant infiltrating a military installation. And if I get caught by our side? Court-martial for disobeying direct orders, unauthorized reconnaissance, and reckless endangerment. So basically, I'm screwed either way. That's a fair assessment, yes. I check my chronometer. 15 minutes until ceasefire ends and this turns into a legitimate war zone again. 15 minutes to cross hostile territory, infiltrate an enemy facility, locate and operate alien food synthesis equipment, and get back to 6 starving cubs who are counting on me not to get myself killed. Tommy, when you create this distraction, make it spectacular. Define spectacular. I want every soldier in a 5-kilometer radius to look up and say, "What in the hell was that?" I can work with that. And Tommy, if this goes sideways, yeah. Tell Ice Queen I died doing something appropriately heroic. Leave out the part about alien baby food. Rex Morrison, you are either the bravest Marine I've ever met or the craziest. Why not both? As I prepare to leave my position and embark on what military historians will probably call the stupidest infiltration mission in human history, I can't help but think about those 6 pairs of enormous black eyes watching me with desperate hope. Kids are kids, regardless of species. And sometimes, doing the right thing means ignoring every piece of tactical training you've ever received and trusting that the universe has a sense of humor about these things. My mother would definitely be proud. She'd also probably ground me for a month, but that's beside the point. You know what they don't put in the recruiting brochures? The part where you sprint across a battlefield carrying alien baby food, while both sides try to turn you into modern art with high explosives? That seems like an oversight in their marketing department. The ceasefire ended exactly 3 minutes ago, and the world has transformed back into a symphony of destruction. Artillery shells are landing with the regularity of a metronome, each explosion sending shockwaves through the ground that I can feel in my teeth. The air tastes like ozone and regret. Tommy's distraction was, and I quote myself here, spectacular. He managed to detonate what appeared to be an entire ammunition depot about 2 kilometers south of my position. The explosion was visible from orbit and probably registered on seismic equipment 3 planets over. Every gun on both sides swiveled toward the fireworks show, which gave me exactly the window I needed. I'm currently pressed against the remnants of what used to be a public transportation hub, watching artillery shells bracket the area about 50 meters to my left. The Chitauri compound is still 400 meters away, across what can only be described as the galaxy's most violent obstacle course. My comm crackles with chatter from both sides trying to figure out what just exploded, which means Tommy's distraction is working perfectly. Unfortunately, it also means that in about 5 minutes everyone's going to realize it was a diversion and start looking for what they were being diverted from. That would be me. The next artillery pause is in 30 seconds. I've timed the pattern. 60 seconds of relative quiet while the big guns cycle, then 10 minutes of concentrated hell. It's not much time, but it's all I've got. 20 seconds. I checked my gear one more time. Emergency rations that I hope work for alien digestive systems, water purification tablets, and a portable protein synthesizer that I may have borrowed from our medical supplies without filling out the proper requisition forms. If I survive this, the paperwork violation alone will get me court-martialed. 10 seconds. The shelling stops, and the sudden silence is almost more jarring than the noise. This is it. I break cover and sprint toward the compound like my life depends on it, which it absolutely does. The ground is a minefield of crater holes and twisted metal, and every step threatens to send me tumbling into a shell hole that would make an excellent grave. Halfway across the open ground, I hear the distinctive whine of incoming artillery and realize that 60 seconds was apparently an optimistic estimate. The first shell lands about 20 meters to my right, close enough that the shockwave lifts me off my feet and deposits me in a crater that smells like sulfur and disappointment. From the crater, I can see the compound's outer perimeter. It's closer than I thought, but there's a problem. Well, several problems, but one big obvious one. There's a Chitauri patrol between me and the fence. 3 adult Chitauri soldiers, each about 8 feet tall and armed with what look like oversized plasma rifles. They're facing away from me, watching Tommy's fireworks show with what I assume is professional interest. This is where things get interesting. I could wait for them to move, but the artillery is picking up again, and staying in this crater much longer will result in me becoming part of the local geology. I could try to go around them, but that would add another 2 minutes to my route, and put me in the open during the next bombardment. Or I could do something so completely insane that it might actually work. I stand up, raise my hands, and walk directly toward them. The first Chitauri notices me when I'm about 10 meters away. It spins around with impressive speed, rifle trained on my center mass, and starts chittering in what my translator renders as a stream of profanity that would make a dockworker blush. "Human soldier, you are in violation of territorial boundaries. Surrender immediately." "Actually," I say, continuing to walk forward with my hands raised, "I'm here to help." This apparently translates into something that breaks their collective brains, because all 3 of them stop and stare at me, like I've just announced my intention to marry their commanding officer. "You are here to help," the lead Chitauri repeats slowly. "You're young. The cubs in the mining facility. They're starving." The reaction is immediate and dramatic. All 3 rifles lower slightly, and the soldiers exchange rapid chittering that my translator is having trouble keeping up with. I catch fragments: cubs, mining facility, human nose. The leader steps forward, mandibles clicking in what I hope is confusion rather than hunger. "You know of cubs? How do you know of cubs?" "Found them during reconnaissance. They haven't eaten in 3 days. They're going to die if someone doesn't feed them." More chittering between the soldiers. This is either going very well or very badly, and I honestly can't tell which. "Why do you care for our young?" the leader asks, and there's something in its voice that sounds almost suspicious. "Because they're kids, and kids shouldn't starve, regardless of what uniform their parents wear." The silence stretches long enough for another artillery shell to land in the distance. Finally, the leader makes a decision. "You will come with us. Commander Hastar will want to hear this." "Actually, I was hoping to just grab some protein paste from your synthesizer and head back. I've got 6 cubs waiting for lunch and they're getting cranky." "You have seen our cubs. You know of their hunger. You will explain to Commander Hastar." "Great. So instead of a quick grab-and-run mission, I'm now being escorted deeper into enemy territory to explain my humanitarian babysitting service to someone whose name sounds like a throat infection." We make our way through the compound, and I have to admit, the Chitauri know how to build a fortress. The walls are thick enough to stop tank rounds, and the defensive positions are laid out with the kind of tactical precision that makes me respect them as enemies even more than I already did. Commander Hastar turns out to be a particularly large Chitauri, with scars across his carapace and an attitude that suggests he's not impressed by much. When the patrol leader explains the situation, Hastar fixes me with a stare that could melt steel. "Human soldier claims to care for Chitauri young," he says, and even through the translator, I can hear the skepticism. "I found them in the mining facility. They're scared, hungry, and alone. Someone needs to feed them." "And you believe this? Someone should be you." "I believe someone should be anyone. I just happen to be the one who found them." Hastar considers this, his head tilting in a way that reminds me uncomfortably of the cubs. Finally, he makes what sounds like a decision. "Very well, human soldier. You will take food to cubs, but Chitauri soldiers will accompany you." "That's going to be a problem." "Wait. Because my people are going to shoot your people on sight, and your people are going to shoot my people on sight, and in the middle of all that shooting, 6 cubs are going to starve to death." More chittering discussion. Artillery continues to fall in the distance, punctuating our conversation with reminders that there's a war happening all around us. "You will go alone," Haskar decides finally, "but you will return here afterward. We will discuss terms." "Terms?" "For safe return of our young." "Fair enough." I follow one of the soldiers to what I assume is the food processing center. where he shows me how to operate a machine that looks like it was designed by someone with a serious grudge against user-friendly interfaces. 5 minutes later, I'm heading back across the battlefield with a container of protein paste and the distinct feeling that this mission just got a lot more complicated than feeding hungry alien babies. The return trip involved more running, more explosions, and one particularly close call with a human patrol who couldn't understand why I was carrying what appeared to be alien baby food through a war zone. "It's for reconnaissance," I told them, which was technically true if you squinted at it from the right angle. By the time I make it back to the mining facility, I'm covered in dirt, my ears are ringing from the artillery, and I'm beginning to question every life choice that led me to this moment. But 6 pairs of enormous black eyes are watching me through the doorway, and suddenly all the explosions and confusion seem worth it. The cubs swarm me the moment I step through the door, chittering excitedly and climbing over each other like furry alien puppies. It's adorable in a way that would definitely get me laughed out of the Marine Corps if anyone saw it. "Food! Food!" they chatter, and I realize their English has improved considerably in the short time I've been gone. Apparently terror and hunger are excellent motivators for language learning. I set down the protein synthesizer and start dispensing the paste into small portions. The cubs watch with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for incoming artillery. The moment I set the first bowl down, they pounce on it with an enthusiasm that's both heartwarming and slightly disturbing. "Easy there, Rugrats. There's enough for everyone." Within minutes, all 6 cubs are happily chomping away, making satisfied purring sounds that my translator helpfully renders as delicious and thank you and more please. Their fur is already looking fluffier, and those enormous eyes have lost that desperate edge. "You came back," the largest cub says between mouthfuls. "We thought perhaps you would forget us." "Kid, I've done a lot of stupid things in my life, but abandoning hungry children isn't one of them." That's when I hear the sound of approaching footsteps. Multiple sets, moving with military precision. My blood freezes because those footsteps are coming from 2 different directions, and they don't sound like they're planning a friendly reunion. Ice Queen's voice cuts through the facility like a plasma blade. "Morrison, stand down and explain yourself." From the opposite corridor comes a chittering response that my translator renders as Commander Hostar announcing, "Human soldier will explain arrangement for safe return of young." The cubs immediately huddle behind me, sensing the tension even though they don't understand the politics. I find myself in the uniquely uncomfortable position of standing between armed human marines and armed Chitauri soldiers, with 6 alien toddlers using me as a human shield. "Well," I mutter, "this is about to get interesting." Ice Queen rounds the corner first, flanked by 2 Marines with rifles ready. She takes in the scene, me, the cubs, the feeding bowls, and her expression goes through several stages of disbelief before settling on something that might charitably be called homicidal rage. "Morrison, please tell me you did not disobey direct orders to play babysitter to enemy offspring." "I can honestly say that was not my primary intention, ma'am." Commander Hastar appears from the other direction with his escort, and suddenly the room is very crowded and very tense. The cubcasts press closer to my legs, whimpering softly. "Commander Frost," Hastar says, apparently recognizing Ice Queen, "your soldier has shown unusual behavior. He fed our young." "My soldier has shown usual behavior," Ice Queen replies coldly. "He's a tactical disaster with a hero complex." "Hey," I protest. "I prefer tactically flexible with humanitarian instincts." Both commanders ignore me, which is probably fair considering I'm currently being used as a climbing gym by alien babies. "Your young were abandoned," Ice Queen points out, "left to starve during your evacuation. Evacuation was urgent. Young were forgotten in confusion of battle. And now?" Postar looks down at the cubs, who are peering around my legs at the various armed soldiers surrounding us. One of them waves a tiny hand at him, and I swear his expression softens slightly. "Now young are safe, fed, cared for by enemy soldier who showed mercy." The standoff stretches for several seconds that feel like hours. Finally, Ice Queen makes a decision that surprises everyone, including me. "Hostar, I propose a temporary truce for the safe return of these cubs to their families." "You would do this?" "I would do this because my Marine, despite being a walking court-martial, did the right thing, and because some things transcend warfare." The cubs choose that moment to start purring again, a sound that's apparently universal for happy and well-fed. Even the armed soldiers on both sides seem to relax slightly. "Besides," Ice Queen adds with something that might be a smile, "if we're going to court-martial Morrison, I'd prefer he survive long enough to face charges." And that's how Marine Sergeant Rex Morrison accidentally initiated the first peace talks between humans and Shittery in 6 months of warfare, all because he couldn't stand to let kids go hungry. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in what used to be the most contested conference room on Kepler 442b, watching 6 Chitauri cubs argue over who gets the last serving of protein paste. They've learned enough English to conduct proper sibling rivalries, which is either progress or a diplomatic disaster waiting to happen. The peace talks are going surprisingly well, considering they started with me getting arrested and commended in the same afternoon. Apparently, saving enemy children while disobeying direct orders creates a unique legal precedent that nobody quite knows how to handle. Ice Queen decided to split the difference. I got a formal reprimand for disobeying orders, a commendation for humanitarian service, and the newly created position of interspecies juvenile liaison. It's probably the only military job title that requires both tactical training and babysitting skills. Rex, the largest cub, who's decided his human name is Buzz, chirps at me from across the room. Commander Hasktar wants to know if human cubs also steal food from siblings. Tell him that's universal behavior among all young species, I reply, watching as little Chirp tries to sneak extra paste while her siblings are distracted. The cubs have become unofficial ambassadors, which is both adorable and terrifying. Yesterday, Pip accidentally ended a 3-hour diplomatic deadlock by asking both negotiating teams why they couldn't just share the mining rights like good cubs. Out of the mouths of alien babes. Tommy stops by every day to help with what he calls Operation Fuzzy Diplomacy. He's invented a dozen gadgets to keep the cubs entertained, including a translation device that lets them communicate directly with human children via video link. The first interspecies playdate in Galactic history involved teaching human kids how to purr, and Chitauri cubs how to laugh. Ice Queen pretends to be annoyed by the whole situation, but I caught her sneaking treats to the cubs yesterday. She claims it was maintaining diplomatic relations, but I've seen that look before. She's gone soft for them just like everyone else. Marine Morrison, Commander Hastar approaches with his usual formal bearing, though he's been considerably less intimidating since I discovered he makes the same cooing sounds at the cubs that human adults make at puppies. Commander, how are the talks progressing? Well, both sides agree that young should not suffer for adult conflicts. It is, as you humans say, common ground. Glad to hear it. He pauses, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. You knew this would happen. When you fed our young, you knew it would lead to peace talks. Commander, I can honestly say I had no idea this would happen. I just couldn't let kids go hungry. Perhaps that is why it worked. The cubs have finished their meal and are now engaged in what appears to be an elaborate game of tag that involves a lot of chittering and climbing on furniture. They've adapted to life on the human base with the resilience that only children possess. What happens when the talks conclude? I ask. Cubs return to their families, of course, but Hasktar pauses, watching as Buzz attempts to teach Pip a human card game with limited success. They will remember human kindness. This generation will know that enemies can also be friends. That evening, as I'm helping the cubs settle down for sleep, Buzz looks up at me with those enormous black eyes. Rex, when we grow up and become soldiers, will we have to fight humans? I hope not, kid. I really hope not. Good, he says, curling up with a stuffed animal that Tommy made for him. Fighting is scary, sharing is better. And there you have it, the most important military wisdom I've ever heard delivered by an alien child who learned English in 3 weeks and thinks the best strategy for ending wars is to make sure everyone gets enough to eat. My mother would definitely be proud. She'd also probably point out that I've somehow managed to become a professional babysitter for creatures that were trying to kill me a month ago. But that's just the kind of career trajectory you get when you let your conscience override your common sense. The cubs are teaching me their language too, and yesterday I accidentally told Commander Hastar that his carapace was very shiny instead of asking about supply requisitions. Apparently that's considered a compliment in Chitauri culture, so the diplomatic incident I was expecting turned into an awkward moment of interspecies bonding. Some days I think the universe has a sense of humor about these things. Other days I'm sure it does, and I'm the punchline. But watching 6 former enemy children sleep peacefully in what used to be a war zone, I figure there are worse things to be than the galaxy's first interspecies nanny with a military rank. Besides, the cubs have started imitating my sarcastic commentary, and there's something deeply satisfying about teaching alien children the fine art of tactical pessimism. They're natural students,